I'm tired, and I'm bloated, and I'm crabby, and I just want to go home tonight, Elena whispered to the empty counter. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Ruby's diner had been her second home for more than 20 years, but tonight even the warm yellow lights felt heavy. At 47, Elena Marquez carried a lifetime of quiet disappointments. She had been married once, divorced now for a decade. Her son Lucas barely spoke to her, and she still worked the same job she took when she was just a young mother trying to survive. Most nights, Elena pushed through with a smile, but some nights like this, she wondered if life still had anything new to offer her. She felt stuck in place, like one of the napkin dispensers that never moved from the counter. Is this really all there is? She often asked herself. The diner was almost empty. A couple of regulars sipped coffee. Ruby, the owner of Ruby's diner and Elena's longtime friend, was wiping down the register, humming softly. In the corner sat a quiet man in a simple dark coat. She had noticed him earlier. He had kind eyes. His name, she would later learn, was Damian Hale. Then the bell over the door slammed open. 2 masked men burst inside, voices sharp and frantic. "Hands up, don't move!" one shouted, waving a weapon. The air froze. Someone dropped a spoon. A woman gasped. Ruby reached slowly for the silent alarm under the counter. Elena's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Elena had no training, no plan, no moment to think. She simply reacted. She grabbed the hot coffee pot, the one she had just filled, and flung the steaming liquid at the robber closest to her. The man screamed and stumbled back as his weapon slipped from his fingers. The other robber spun toward her in shock. Before fear could stop her, Elena lunged and tackled him. Chairs scraped, people shouted. Damian moved fast, grabbing the robber's arm and helping pin him to the floor. He didn't look afraid, just focused, steady. Somewhere in the chaos, a regular named Roy pressed the silent alarm. Sirens began to wail in the distance. A young customer in the corner had his phone out. He recorded everything. Elena throwing the coffee, Damian helping her, the struggle on the floor. His hands shook, but the camera didn't stop. Within moments, police rushed in and cuffed the robbers. Ruby hurried to Elena with a towel for her wrist, where hot coffee had splashed her skin. People crowded around her. Someone cried. Someone else said she was a hero. Elena just stood there, breathing hard, trying to understand what had happened. Damian stepped closer. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. His voice was calm, almost warm. Elena wanted to answer, but her throat felt tight. The young man with the phone was already uploading the video. The police asked questions. Customers replayed the moment over and over, praising her bravery. But Elena felt strangely distant from all of it, like she was watching it happen to someone else. When the diner finally quieted, she sat down, exhausted. Her hands trembled. She wasn't thinking about the news that would spread by morning. She wasn't thinking about praise, fame, or strangers calling her a hero. She was thinking only one tired, honest thought. I didn't ask for this. But life had already changed, and by sunrise, the whole world would know her name. I just want things to go back to normal, Elena murmured as she pushed through the crowd outside Ruby's diner. But nothing was normal anymore. Not after last night. Reporters stood by the windows, snapping photos every time she moved. People whispered her name as if she were a celebrity. Elena Marquez had spent her whole life unnoticed. Now strangers wanted her face on TV. Ruby squeezed her hand. "Elena, honey, you can't hide forever." Before Elena could answer, 4 black SUVs pulled up to the curb. Their doors opened at the same time, like something from a movie. A tall man in a suit stepped out. "Ms. Marquez," he said gently, "Mr. Damian Hale requests your presence at his home. He insists it will be private." Elena felt her stomach twist. Damian Hale, the quiet man she had saved. She didn't know him, and yet her life was already tangled with his. Ruby gave a small nod. "Go," Ruby whispered. "See what he wants." Elena slid into the SUV, hands folded nervously in her lap. The leather seats smelled like money. The world outside moved fast, and she felt smaller with each passing block. She wondered what Lucas, her son who barely spoke to her anymore, would think if he saw her riding in a billionaire's car. When they reached Damian's estate, she hesitated before stepping out. The house was beautiful but quiet, the kind of place that echoed when you breathed. Damian met her at the door. He didn't smile widely. He simply held out his hand and said, "Thank you. You saved my life." They sat together in a warm room with soft chairs. Damian listened to her speak about her job, her long years at the diner, her fear of the sudden attention. He did not interrupt. He did not rush her. Elena noticed how gentle he seemed, how tired he looked around the eyes. Then he placed an envelope on the table. Inside was a check for $3 million. Elena felt dizzy. She stared at the number as if it belonged to someone else, someone braver, someone more deserving. "I want you to have this," Damian said quietly. "You changed everything for me. Let me help change something for you." Elena tried to breathe. $3 million could pay every debt she had. It could change her son's future. It could change her entire life. But something inside her felt heavy. She pushed the check back toward him with shaking hands. "I can't take your money," she said softly. "I didn't help you for a reward." Damian looked at her with surprise and something like admiration. "I thought you might say that," he said, "which is why I want to offer you something else." He explained his plan for a charitable foundation that would help working families, people like the ones Elena served every night at the diner. He wanted someone with real-life experience, someone who understood struggle to help shape it. "Would you consider becoming the foundation director?" he asked. "You'd make a real difference." Elena felt her breath catch. Director? Her? She had never been more than a waitress and a mother who did her best. She thought of all the times she had wondered if life still had something left for her. But outside the window she could see reporters still waiting, calling her name, flashing cameras. They wanted interviews. Talk shows called her phone nonstop. Her face was everywhere. "I need time," she whispered. "I don't know if I'm meant for this." Damian nodded. "Take all the time you need. I believe in you, Elena." She stepped back outside, blinking against the lights and noise. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones pushed toward her. The world wanted answers, but Elena only had one. Was this a path she should take? Or would stepping into it change her life forever? "I can do this," Elena whispered as she stepped into the tall glass building. The words felt fragile, like they might shatter if she said them any louder. After days of thinking, praying, pacing her small living room, Elena Marquez had accepted Damian Hale's offer to become director of the Hale Community Foundation. She didn't feel ready. She didn't feel qualified. She only felt the quiet push inside her that said, "Try, just try." Now she stood in the bright lobby of Hale Industries, surrounded by sharp suits and polished floors. People stared openly. "That's her," someone whispered. "The woman from the video." Elena wished she could fade into her old apron. Paula, One of the foundation managers guided her through the building, speaking quickly about meetings, budgets, and committees. Elena nodded, absorbing little. Each word felt like another weight added to her chest. This wasn't the diner. There were no second chances written into the walls here. At lunch, she sat alone in the cafeteria, unwrapping a sandwich with careful hands. Nearby voices drifted toward her. She's older than I expected. What is she wearing? Damian must be trying to look charitable. The words landed quietly, but deeply. Elena kept her eyes on the table. Online, the noise was louder. People dissected her past, mocked her clothes, shared photos from the diner. Strangers debated whether she deserved the job. Ruby tried to shield her, but the world had already pushed its way in. Elena felt exposed, like someone had pulled open a door she never meant to unlock. At night, she sat by her window scrolling through headlines and comments. Some were kind. Many were cruel. She looks tired. How old is she? This is the new director? She set the phone down and pressed her fingers to her eyes. Her chest tightened, but the tears wouldn't fall. Across the city, Lucas watched the same clips. He saw his mother's face on the screen, tense, uncertain, trying to stand tall. He hovered over her contact name, then locked his phone. Back at Hale Industries, Elena was shown her small office. The nameplate gleamed softly, Director Elena Marquez. It didn't feel real. Damian stepped in quietly. How was your first day? He asked. Elena hesitated. Everyone here seems sure of themselves, she said. I feel like I'm borrowing a life that isn't mine. Damian studied her, not as a headline, not as a symbol, but as a woman standing at the edge of something unfamiliar. You belong here, he said gently. You bring what they can't learn. His calm didn't erase her fear, but it steadied it. Later, as she left the building, a reporter shouted, Elena, do you really think you deserve this job? Cameras turned. Elena froze. For a moment, she felt the same panic as the night of the robbery, but this time there was no coffee pot to grab, no instinct to save her, only the understanding that her life had shifted, and there was no stepping back. She walked away in silence, and in that quiet, she realized something unsettling. This new world wouldn't protect her. She would have to learn how to stand inside it. You are only kind to me out of pity, Elena said softly, though she wasn't sure Damian even heard her. He had called earlier that day, inviting her to dinner. Not a business dinner, not a foundation meeting, but something gentler, something personal. Elena almost said no. She felt tired, overwhelmed, and unsure of herself. But something in Damian's voice made her feel safe, so she agreed. Now she stood outside a quiet restaurant, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Damian arrived moments later. He wasn't dressed like a billionaire. He wore a simple shirt and dark coat, and he looked almost nervous. I'm glad you came, he said. Inside, the restaurant was warm and private. No loud music, no flashing lights, just the soft glow of lamps and the smell of fresh bread. Damian chose a quiet table in the corner. They didn't talk about money. They didn't talk about the foundation. Instead, they talked about real things, the kind people hide in their hearts. Damian told her about losing his wife years ago and how the house still felt empty without her laughter. Elena told him about her divorce and the long, painful distance between her and Lucas. She spoke slowly, unsure if sharing so much was wise, but Damian listened with such quiet respect that her fear eased. He told her he admired her courage. She told him she admired his calm. For the first time in a long while, Elena felt seen, not as a viral video, not as a news story, but as a woman with a life, with scars, with hope still hiding somewhere inside. But outside the safe bubble of that dinner, the world moved sharply. Camera flashes burst the moment they stepped out of the restaurant. Paparazzi shouted her name. Phones pointed at her face. They asked questions she didn't want to hear. Elena, are you and Mr. Hale dating? Is the foundation job just a cover? Do you plan to marry him? Damian tried to shield her, but the lights were too bright, the voices too loud. Elena felt her breath tighten as if a hand were closing around her chest. She had never lived with eyes on her like this. She felt suddenly exposed, like a woman standing in a tornado wearing nothing but fear. They got into the car, but the shouting followed them. Damian apologized, but Elena shook her head. "It's not your fault," she whispered. "I just don't know how to live in this world." When the car dropped her at her small apartment, she noticed people waiting near the stairs, strangers taking photos of her building. She hurried inside. Her hands shook as she locked the door. Later that night, she checked her phone, a mistake she instantly regretted. Someone had dug up a 10-year-old Facebook picture and wrote, "This is the woman who caught Damian Hale's eye." Her heart sank. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her body felt heavy, like grief rested on every bone. Then her phone buzzed again, a message from Damian. "I meant every word tonight. Don't let the noise push you away." Elena held the phone to her chest. In the weeks after that first dinner, Elena and Damian fell into a quiet rhythm. They didn't announce anything. They didn't rush to define it. But most evenings, they found their way back to each other. Simple meals, long walks, shared silences that felt easier than words. Elena hadn't planned to let herself grow close to him, yet somehow it happened gently, almost without permission. With Damian, she felt steadier, less alone. Tonight, that closeness felt terrifying. "Please don't let me embarrass you," Elena whispered as she stepped out of the car. Her hands trembled. The charity gala shimmered ahead. Gold lights, expensive cars, cameras lining the entrance. It was her first major public event since becoming director of the foundation. Ruby had helped her choose the dress, reminding her again and again that she belonged here. Damian met her at the door. His smile was warm, familiar now. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, "and I want you with me tonight." Inside, the ballroom glowed with wealth and attention. Donors mingled. Journalists hovered. Elena stayed close to Damian, aware of every glance, every whisper. When it was time for speeches, Damian stepped onto the stage. The room hushed, cameras lifted. "There's someone I want you all to meet properly," he said. "Someone who matters to me, both personally and professionally." Elena's heart raced. "This is Elena Marquez," Damian continued. "She is the director of the Hale Community Foundation, and she is also my girlfriend." A ripple moved through the room. Surprise, curiosity, sudden interest. Applause followed, polite but charged. Elena stepped forward, her palms damp. The lights felt hot on her skin, but Damian's presence grounded her. She trusted him. She had let herself. Then a sharp voice cut through the room. "Stop." A young woman pushed forward, heels striking the floor with purpose. Elegant, furious. Damian stiffened. "Sienna," he said quietly. She ignored him, eyes locked on Elena. "This woman didn't save my father out of kindness," Sienna said coldly. "She did it for the payoff. She's a gold digger who planned this from the start." The room inhaled. Cameras exploded with flashes. Whispers spread instantly. Elena froze. The word girlfriend still echoed in her ears, now twisted, poisoned. She refused his money? Sienna scoffed. Please, she wanted power, access, a place in his life. She wants what my mother built. Damian stepped forward. That's enough, he said firmly. But the damage was already done. Elena felt heat crawl up her neck. Shame burned behind her eyes. Every stare felt like judgment. She tried to speak, but no sound came. Phones were recording. Faces were watching. She stepped back from the stage. Damian reached for her, but she shook her head, panic tightening her chest. She turned and walked quickly toward the exit, past the whispers, past the cameras, past the word gold digger already forming in headlines. Outside, cold air slammed into her lungs. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Alerts, messages, breaking news. Inside the ballroom, Sienna's voice still rang sharp and accusing, but Elena heard only one thought, loud and painful. If his own daughter believes I'm using him, what will the world believe now? Just stop talking about me. You all know nothing, Elena whispered to the television, though the voices didn't stop. They grew louder every hour. After the disaster at the gala, the internet exploded. Someone posted a clip of Sienna's accusation, and within minutes, hashtags began spreading like wildfire. Gold digger scam, chatter she planned. Not a Hero Talk shows replayed the moment again and again. News anchors smirked as they discussed her simple background and her suspicious rise. A popular host laughed and said, "Come on, folks, nobody saves a billionaire for free." Journalists crowded outside Ruby's diner, banging on the windows, yelling questions at Ruby and the customers. Ruby tried to block the door with her arms. "She didn't do anything wrong. Leave her alone," she shouted. But they didn't listen. Some reporters even knocked on Elena's apartment door early in the morning, calling her name, begging for a statement. Elena had to sit on the floor with her back against the door just to steady her breathing. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Hundreds of messages, cruel comments, threats, jokes at her expense. Influencers made videos mocking her clothes, her job, even her age. Elena felt herself shrinking with every word she read. Then Damian made a public statement, which she watched on her phone. "This woman saved my life and has become someone special to me," he said on live television. "She has shown nothing but honesty and courage. Please stop attacking her." He looked tired and angry, and for a moment, Elena felt a small swell of hope. But the internet twisted his words. He's blinded by her. She's manipulating him. She wants his money. The hate grew sharper, more cruel. Elena tried to ignore it, but late one night, sitting alone on her couch, she broke. Tears came fast, shaking her whole body. She covered her mouth to quiet her sobs, afraid the neighbors might hear. "I shouldn't have taken the job," she cried. "I shouldn't have gone to that dinner. I shouldn't have stepped into his world." She felt foolish, exposed, ruined. Elena wiped her eyes and stared out the window. The city felt bigger than ever. She had never felt so small. "Don't hang up," Elena whispered into the phone, her voice shaking. She had spent the entire night thinking about Lucas. The online hate had sharpened overnight, turning cruel and relentless. Each headline felt heavier than the last. Somewhere between the noise and the silence of her apartment, a deep ache settled in her chest, the kind only a mother feels when her child is slipping further away. When Lucas finally answered, hope rushed through her so quickly it almost hurt. But it didn't last. His voice was distant, guarded, like he had already braced himself for disappointment. Elena tried to speak, tried to hold the moment steady, but the silence between them stretched. When he finally spoke, his words came fast, uneasy, confusion, pressure, fear spilling out all at once. He couldn't face it. Not yet. Not with the whole world watching her. The call ended abruptly. Elena stood in the center of her living room, phone still in her hand, its weight suddenly unbearable. Tears blurred her vision. Losing her marriage had been painful, but this, the distance from her son, was a wound that never stopped aching. Hours passed. She sank to the floor, hugging her knees, the television glowing across the room, even though she knew better than to watch. A familiar face filled the screen, a popular host laughing as an old photo of Elena in her diner uniform appeared beside him. The joke landed hard. The studio audience laughed along. Something inside Elena cracked. Then came the knock. She wiped her eyes and opened the door, and froze. Lucas stood there breathless, his face flushed, eyes red with worry and anger. It looked like he had run the entire way. He stepped inside before she could speak, shutting the door behind him with a force that echoed through the apartment. They stared at each other. Years of unspoken pain filled the room, the divorce, the double shifts, the nights she wasn't home, the resentment he carried, the guilt she never knew how to release. It all hovered between them, heavy and unfinished. Then Lucas broke. The anger fell away first, replaced by something raw and shaken. He spoke quickly, words tumbling over each other, about the videos, the comments, the cruelty, about seeing strangers laugh at his mother on television, about realizing how wrong it all was. Elena couldn't hold herself together anymore. She covered her mouth as sobs escaped, apologies pouring out between breaths. For the years she felt she failed him, for the times she thought love alone would be enough. Lucas crossed the space between them and pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if afraid she might disappear. "Mom," he said warmly and hugged her tighter. For the first time in years, they cried together. They sat on the floor for hours after that, talking softly, carefully. Old wounds opened and closed again with honesty instead of blame. Lucas spoke about the anger he never understood. Elena shared fears she had buried under responsibility. Somewhere between tears and tired laughter, the distance between them began to loosen. When the apartment finally grew quiet, Lucas looked around the small space, the worn couch, the dim lamp, the stillness. Elena tried to reassure him she was fine, but the lie didn't hold. He had seen the truth on her face, in her shaking hands, in the way the world had pressed in on her from all sides. He stayed. Later, as he settled onto the couch with a blanket, Elena felt something unfamiliar but deeply comforting settle in her chest. She wasn't drowning anymore. The world no longer felt impossibly large. She felt anchored. She felt safe. As she turned off the lights and walked toward her bedroom, her phone vibrated softly in her hand. A headline glowed across the screen. Sienna Hale makes another public statement, claims she has proof about Elena Marquez. Elena stared at it, her stomach tightening once more. The storm wasn't over, but this time she wouldn't face it alone. Elena adjusted her jacket as she stepped into the foundation meeting room. Weeks had passed since the painful night at the gala. The noise online had softened to a dull hum. Reporters still tried, but she no longer flinched at every voice. With Lucas visiting often, Elena felt something unfamiliar but steady growing inside her, resilience. At the Hale Community Foundation, she found her footing. Her ideas took shape quietly at first. Programs for struggling single mothers, support for families drowning in medical bills, new paths for older workers starting over. Each plan carried pieces of her own life. She knew loneliness. She knew sacrifice. She knew how hope could feel heavy when it was all you had left. This time, people listened. Paula, foundation manager who guided her when she first came, leaned forward during meetings, asking questions instead of correcting her. Board members nodded. Elena's voice no longer trembled when she spoke. She wasn't hiding behind the memory of who she used to be, and Damian noticed, not as a donor or a founder, but as the man who watched her grow. He stopped by her office most days, sometimes with a quiet knock, sometimes just leaning against the doorframe. He asked how she was, not how the foundation was doing, not what the headlines said. They shared lunches that stretched longer than planned, conversations that drifted easily between work and life, grief and hope. With Damian, Elena didn't feel like she had to perform strength. She could simply exist. One evening, as they walked out together, Damian slowed his steps to match hers, a small thing, but she noticed. He always waited until she was ready, always listened before speaking. In his presence, the world felt less sharp. Life was knitting itself back together. But not everyone found comfort in Elena's calm. From a distance, Sienna Hale watched her. She saw the photos, Damian standing close to Elena, his expression softer than it had been in years. She heard staff speak Elena's name with respect. She saw donations rise alongside Elena's programs. Fear crept in, twisting quietly into resentment. To Sienna, Elena wasn't just a woman in the spotlight anymore. She was a presence, a reminder that her father's life was moving forward with someone else, making her more confident in her decision to lead false rumors about Elena to her media contact. Back at the foundation, Elena closed her office door with a smile. She had finalized a program that would help hundreds of families. Damian congratulated her, pride unmistakable in his eyes. Later, Lucas texted, "Proud of you, Mom." For the first time in months, Elena allowed herself to believe things were truly turning upward. Then her phone vibrated. Breaking news: a new scandal surrounds Elena Marquez. Leaked documents raise questions. She stopped walking. The hallway felt colder than before. Whatever peace she had found was about to be tested again. And this time, survival would take more than courage. "Tell me this isn't happening again," Elena whispered as she read the headline glowing on her phone. The leaked story spread faster than she could blink. Articles claimed Elena mishandled funds at the foundation. Others said she forced staff to follow unapproved programs. Some posts acted as if she were slowly taking control of Damian's company. Most of the accusations were lies. Some were twisted truths, but all of them were designed to hurt her. Elena's stomach tightened. She had just started finding peace. She had just started believing she belonged somewhere, and now the world was calling her a fraud again. At the foundation, staff whispered nervously. Reporters waited outside the building. Paula came rushing into Elena's office. "Don't panic," Paula said. "Damian has ordered a full investigation. He believes you." Elena nodded, but her hands shook. She didn't want Damian fighting her battles again. She wanted to stand on her own this time. By afternoon, Damian called a meeting with the legal team, the board, and the audit department in his office. Documents were spread across the table: files, emails, financial logs. People spoke in serious tones. Elena sat silently, watching the storm unfold. Hours passed. Finally, one of the auditors cleared his throat and announced that the documents were altered and that the leaks were sent from an email connected to Elena Hale. The room froze. Damian closed his eyes, pain washing over his face. Elena felt a sharp ache in her chest, not anger, but sadness. Damian called Sienna to the office. Elena didn't want to be there, but Damian gently said, "She needs to face you too." Sienna walked into the room stiffly, her chin lifted, but her eyes tired. She tried to remain strong, but her voice trembled. "I did it," Sienna admitted. "I leaked the files. I wanted people to question her. I wanted my father back. I wanted things to be like before." Elena stepped toward her slowly. Sienna flinched, expecting anger, but Elena's voice was soft. "Sienna, I'm not trying to replace your mother," she said. "I couldn't. No one can. And I'm not trying to take your father away. I just want a chance to live my life with honesty." Tears filled Sienna's eyes. "I was scared," she whispered. "Scared he'd forget her. Scared you'd take her place." Elena's heart softened, and she moved forward to hug Sienna. For the first time, Sienna looked at Elena not with hate, but with confusion, grief, and a hint of understanding. Damian watched silently, emotion thick in his eyes. Later, when everyone left and the building was quiet, Damian walked Elena to her car. She felt drained, but somehow lighter. "Thank you," he said, "for your kindness, for your strength." Elena smiled weakly. "I just did what felt right." Damian took her hands gently, his voice barely above a whisper. "Elena, I don't want to lose you. Not now. Not ever." Before she could breathe, he dropped to one knee and opened a ring box. "Elena Marquez, will you marry me?" Elena's heart stopped. 6 months had passed since Damian's quiet proposal, the one Elena had answered with tears, a shaking smile, and a whispered yes. Their lives had changed in many beautiful ways, but nothing prepared Elena for the news that Ruby's diner was drowning in debt. Medical bills, slow business, and the recent media chaos had pushed it close to foreclosure. When Elena heard this, her heart felt heavy. The diner wasn't just a building. It was her past, her shelter, her beginning. She couldn't let it die. With Damian's support, Elena brought the idea to the foundation board. Transform Ruby's Diner into a community support center, a safe place offering meals, job help, tutoring, counseling, and more, while still functioning as a diner for the neighborhood. The board agreed, even to Ruby remaining the manager. It was finally D-Day, Elena's wedding. The diner glowed with soft lights and simple decorations. Nothing fancy, nothing loud, just warm, honest beauty. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with flowers, and Elena felt her heart swell. She stood in the back room, smoothing her dress, breathing slowly. She was not the same woman she had been 6 months ago. She felt stronger, steadier, whole. A knock came. Lucas peeked in, smiling gently. "Ready, Mom?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. More than ready. He offered his arm, and she took it. They stepped out together into the place where her new life began one night with a pot of coffee and a moment of courage. Damian waited at the front, eyes soft as they met hers. Sienna stood nearby, holding a small bouquet. Her expression was unsure, but sincere. She stepped forward before the ceremony started. "I'm not perfect," Sienna said quietly, "but I'm trying. And I want you to be happy. Both of you." Elena squeezed her hand. The ceremony was simple and full of love. Ruby sat in the front row, wiping her eyes proudly. Staff from the foundation, old customers, and even neighbors cheered when Elena and Damian shared their first kiss as husband and wife. It was not a fairy tale. It was something real, something earned. Later that evening, Elena stood alone for a moment, looking around the diner. Her heart swelled with a gentle ache. She had walked into this place at 20 years old, broken and lost. She had nearly died here. She had saved a life here. And now she had begun a new one. At 47, she didn't just find love. She found courage. She found hope. She found herself. And the journey was only just beginning.